Today, you'll learn English with the news. We'll read a news article together on the UK's involvement in the war in the Middle East. Welcome back to JForrest English. Of course, I'm Jennifer. Now let's get started. Our headline: UK promises jets, drones, and warship for Strait of Hormuz defense mission. Now here it seems like a simple headline, and the headline is made shorter by removing certain words. Do you know what those words are and where they've been removed? This is one, UK. This requires the article the. It's the UK. The UK promises jets, drones, and warship. So here, these are plural, so they don't require articles, but this is singular. Grammatically, it requires an article. And a warship, a meaning any warship, and a warship for the Strait of Hormuz defense mission. Now, this one's interesting because the name is the Strait of Hormuz. So make sure you have those four words, the Strait of Hormuz. However, the is actually related to mission. The mission. What type of mission? The defense mission. What type of defense mission? The Strait of Hormuz defense mission. So these words give more information about the mission. Don't worry about taking these notes. I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF. You can find the link in the description. Now let's continue with the article. The UK, notice now that we're in the body of the article, full grammar will be used. This is only an exception with headlines to keep them as short as possible. The UK has said it will contribute drones, fighter jets, and a warship. So remember, this is what we added up here because a means any. Grammatically, you could say the warship, but if you use the, it's a specific one that has already been talked about or one that has already been promised. But we don't have that context. So without the context, it makes sense just to use a, which means any warship. A warship to a joint mission aimed at safeguarding shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. So here, the belongs to the Strait of Hormuz. Now, I hear a lot of my students talking about this right now because obviously it is a topical event. A topical event is just that, simply one that people are talking about. So you could say the Strait of Hormuz is topical, not talkable because the pronunciation is similar. Topical, topical. Let's review this word, safeguarding. So this is the verb to safeguard. Safeguard, one word. It's in the ing form because it's followed by a preposition. So aimed at means this is the goal of it. The goal, the aim is to safeguard shipping. So you can think of safeguard as to cause something to be safe, to guard something, to ensure its safety. So you can take the meaning of the word safe and guard to understand the meaning. But the meaning is to protect from danger, damage, or loss. Of course, you can use it in the context of a war or conflict, but you can also use it in a more everyday term. This is why people install security cameras or an alarm system at their home to safeguard their home. You might diversify your investment portfolio to safeguard your retirement fund or your savings. So you can use this in an everyday context as well. Are you enjoying this lesson? If you are, then I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers from TV, movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, expand your vocabulary with natural expressions, and learn advanced grammar easily. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for the link to learn more, or you can go to my website and click on Finally Fluent Academy. Now let's continue with our lesson. Defense Minister John Healey announced the package at a virtual summit of defense ministers on Tuesday. Don't forget this preposition on when you state the day of the week. Of course, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, etc. On Tuesday. It's also common to say the day of the week and the specific day of the month. On Tuesday, May 15th. Now, I didn't write it, but notice I pronounced it with the ordinal th, because that's required when you say the date. So I'll just write it in there, on May 15th. Now here, if you just use May and you don't include the specific day in May, you change the preposition to in. So in May, on Tuesday, on May 15th, on Tuesday, May 15th. Those are your options for prepositions. Notice here they're using the terminology a package, which you receive at your door from Amazon or whatever company that you have in your country. In this context, package refers to the policies or support or procedures within a group that are offered. So here, the package includes the drones, the jets, and the warship, and whatever else. All of those individual things together would be referred to as the package. Announced the package at a virtual summit of defense ministers on Tuesday. It includes it being the package. So now they're sharing what is in that package. It includes autonomous systems to detect and clear naval mines. So autonomous means that it is done automatically without the direct involvement of a human being. So for example, if this is to detect and clear naval mines, there isn't a person on a ship doing this. It's done without the support of a human. Drone boats and Typhoon jets for air patrols. Typhoon, you may be familiar with this as a weather terminology to mean a tropical storm, a severe tropical storm. However, in this context, it's just the name of the jet, Typhoon jets for air patrols. It has nothing to do with the weather system. Let's keep reading. More than 40 other nations are involved in the mission. So here, don't forget this preposition. So it's to be involved, always in that ed, because this is your verb that you conjugate. So if this were a past event that you were describing, you could say 40 other nations were involved in the mission last month. But here they're just stating it as a present fact. So your verb to be conjugated are involved. This is always in the ed form, involved. Notice that softy pronunciation, involved, involved, involved in. Now we have that soft D here. When I connect on to the preposition in connected speech, I'm going to transfer that sound, involved in, din. And you'll hear a soft D before I say in, are involved in the mission, are involved in the mission. More than 40 other nations are involved in the mission, which Healey, remember this is the UK defense minister, which Healey said would begin when conditions allow. So here, this which represents the mission, which Healey said would begin. So the mission would begin when conditions allow. So this implies that right now, the conditions do not allow the mission to take place. So they can't move forward with their plan. And this is vague, so it's not committing to a specific time in 1 week or 1 month. It's just saying when conditions allow. And here notice would is the past of will. And this is being used because of reported speech. So Healey probably said The mission will begin when conditions allow. But Healy is not saying these words directly. The words are being reported by someone else. So Healy said the mission would begin when conditions allow. So the past simple is used for reported speech. Let's keep reading. 4 months. Before I read any further, I know that the verb tense is going to be, don't look, it's going to be the present perfect or the present perfect continuous. You have those options because it depends if the verb is a state of verb or if it can exist in the ing form. 4 months, Iran has been controlling. So control is the verb, which can exist in the ing form, of course, because you see it right here. If it were the verb be, then it wouldn't exist in the ing form. So you would say 4 months, Iran has been, and then something else, has been involved, for example. So here, 4 months, Iran has been controlling the Strait of Hormuz. So the action started in the past and continues until now. The present perfect or the present perfect continuous. Don't forget to conjugate your verb because you have or has depending on the subject. The subject being Iran. So it's it. It has. This has always been because this is your verb that's in the ing form. This is the auxiliary verb, has been controlling the Strait of Hormuz. And now you already know that you need the 4 words to complete this, the Strait of Hormuz, the Strait of Hormuz. Now they're giving more information about the Strait of Hormuz. Notice that it begins with an M dash and it ends with 1, 2. This tells you grammatically that all of this information can be omitted, which means removed, and grammatically it has to make sense without it. So let's just see if that's true. For months, Iran has been controlling the Strait of Hormuz in retaliation for US and Israeli attacks. So yes, it does without it. Now you can add this additional information, which will tell you about the Strait of Hormuz or whatever was just mentioned here. One of the world's busiest oil shipping channels. So just to give you some context in case you didn't know, and this is done as M dashes because otherwise you would have to stop this idea, period, write this as a next sentence, and then add in this as another sentence. So it would make it longer and more disjoint. So this is a way of inserting additional information without interrupting the flow. One of the world's busiest oil shipping channels. Now here we have busiest, which is the superlative. So we have busy, busier is a comparative. This port is busier than that port. So busy, busier, busiest, which you know is the highest degree. But we have one of. So we know that the Strait of Hormuz is not the highest degree solely. It shares that with other shipping channels. Let's review this example. That was one of the best movies I've ever seen. So notice here first, this is in the present perfect. I've seen. So the verb see in the context of a movie, you wouldn't put it in the ing form. You would just say, I've seen. Now, I put it in the present perfect because this example is of life experience. Tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, 5 years from now, I can watch other movies. So this isn't always going to be the best movie. So that's why it's in the present perfect, to acknowledge that it's an ongoing time reference. Notice here, that was one of the best. Now, my noun is plural. Movies. You can't say one of the best movie That's grammatically incorrect. Just like here, we have channels with the S. Why? Because you have the entire category of every movie you've watched. So, of course, there are many, many in there. Now, you have that category, and then you're going to take this as one of the best movies. Okay, so you have the category, which is plural, and then taking one. Now, why would someone say that was one of the best movies? Just to keep your options open, really. Because if you say that was the best movie I've ever seen, that's a difficult thing to say, right? Because you probably have many movies that you've liked, and those movies could be very different from one another. Can you choose that best movie you've ever seen, or do you have many that come to mind? So because of that, it's sometimes difficult to choose just one. You can use that was one of the best, and then make sure your category is plural. You do not have to use best. You could say funniest. That was one of the funniest movies. Maybe that was one of the scariest movies. Or maybe that was one of the worst movies I've ever seen. So you want it in your category of movies that are terrible. Why not? We've all seen really bad movies. Maybe this is one of them. One of them. So now I wrote down also just the different examples I gave, but using a different sentence. So today I was busy. That's just the adjective busy. Today I was busier than yesterday. That's the comparative because we have today, yesterday. We're comparing them. Today was the busiest I've been in weeks. Okay, so I didn't use one of. I just use the busiest I've been, but I said in weeks. So this isn't in my entire life. It's in the last few weeks. In weeks is not specific. It could be 3 weeks. It could be 5 weeks, but it sounds like a relatively short number of weeks. So this is a good exercise for you to practice. You can take one adjective and then use it in different forms: the adjective, the comparative, and the superlative. Let's continue on. In retaliation for. You'll hear this a lot when talking about conflicts, arguments. Retaliation means that Iran has only done these actions because the US and Israeli have done other actions. So in this case, the actions are attacks. And retaliation sounds negative. So you're always, the action that the other party, in this case Iran, is taking is negative. So it's acting in a negative way only because someone first acted in a negative way and doing it as a form of punishment. Let's keep reading. The US, for its part, has been enforcing a blockade of Iranian ports to exert pressure on Tehran to agree to its turn, a move that has infuriated Iran. Here, notice for its part. It belongs to the US. Now, this article has mentioned what Iran has done, what the UK is doing. So this introduces that now we're going to talk about what the US is doing. So for its part means the actions of the US in response to the situation. So you could say the US has responded by enforcing a blockade. For example, you could change the wording. The US, for its part, has been enforcing. So here we have the present perfect continuous as well, because it started in the past and continues until now. And the verb enforce can be in the ing form. Has been enforcing a blockade. So a blockade is a barrier to prevent. So just think of the verb to block. If you block, then you prevent something. So a blockade of Iranian ports to exert pressure. Exert is a more formal way of saying to put pressure on Tehran. It's very common to use the verb to put pressure on someone. In fact, that's far more common than using exert. Exert. To exert pressure on Tehran to agree to its terms. So terms, you can think of if you're signing a contract with someone, maybe the bank, the terms are you have to pay the money back in 20 years with this interest rate. And then you sign. So the terms, what you agree to. And it belongs to the US. So to the US's terms, its terms. A move that has infuriated Iran. This is a great adjective to have in your vocabulary. So to infuriate means to make extremely angry. So this is actually a verb. I said adjective, excuse me, because you can say she is infuriated. So that functions as the adjective form, but in this context, this is the active verb because has infuriated. So this is has made Iran extremely angry. So the verb is to infuriate, to make extremely angry. So the verb angry or the word angry doesn't exist as a verb. So you can't say to angry Iran. To anger Iran, you could use that. So to infuriate Iran, to make Iran extremely angry. Here's an example with an adjective. My boss is infuriated because I lost the signed contract. So you took the contract to your client, they signed it, and then somehow on your way back to the office, maybe you went for lunch and you left the contract on the table. So your boss is extremely angry. My boss is infuriated because I lost the signed contract. So this is the adjective form. Here, a move. So a move is a decision, a strategic decision. We use this a lot in sports or games. When you're playing chess, you would say, you would think to yourself, what's my next move? So what should I do next? A strategic decision, a move that has infuriated Iran. So here it's a verb. Let's keep reading. Some 20% of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas. So liquefied means it's in a liquid state. Liquefied natural gas uses the crucial waterway. So, of course, the crucial waterway is the Strait of Hormuz. So they're just describing it in a different way to try to avoid the repetition of constantly saying the Strait of Hormuz. Also, they do this so they can give you other information about the Strait of Hormuz in a natural way. So now you know, oh, it's a crucial waterway whose blockage has sent prices soaring globally. So soaring, of course, means that it has increased very quickly or dramatically, and it being the price of oil or natural gas. Some is a casual way of saying approximately. Some isn't the most commonly used to represent approximately. It'd be more common to just use approximately, which sounds quite formal and professional. Around is the casual everyday way of saying approximately. Some is a casual alternative, but it's not that commonly used. And notice this word choice, has sent prices soaring. So to send something soaring is the sentence structure. This just means has caused prices to soar. So to cause something to do something. This is the standard sentence structure. This is an alternative sentence structure. However, if you are not at a very advanced level, you can just ignore this because this is the everyday commonly used sentence structure. So to cause something or someone infinitive, to do something. So the infinitive here is the verb to soar, which means to rise, to increase quickly. And then globally just gives you more information. Let's keep reading. A ceasefire. So this is a thing. We know it's a thing because we have a, and articles are only used with nouns. So a ceasefire. This is an arrangement between two parties to not keep fighting. A ceasefire. But it's being used as a noun. A ceasefire has been in place. So if something is in place, it means it's active. A ceasefire has been in place between the US and Iran since April. So notice our present perfect was introduced before the timeline, since April. You could start the sentence with since April, a ceasefire has been in place between the US and Iran. You could absolutely do that. Both options are acceptable for the placement of the time reference. But because it started in the past and continues until now, the verb be is not a verb that can go in the ing form. It's a stative verb. So that's why it's not in the present perfect continuous. But US President Donald Trump has said it is on massive life support. So it being the ceasefire. On massive life support. So notice these quotations tell you that these words, this choice of wording is because it came out of Donald Trump's mouth. He said it. So if a patient is on life support in the hospital, it means they cannot breathe on their own. Their body cannot function on its own. So it needs support in order to stay alive. It's a very critical situation. So this is the image you should have. That ceasefire, the agreement, to just be very blunt, is almost dead. So it's in Donald Trump's mind, the agreement isn't going well and may not last very long. Let's keep reading. Both sides have accused the other of launching attacks in the strait. So here they're just using two of the four words. The four words are the Strait of Hormuz. So don't forget that preposition there. They're using two because it's already been mentioned many times. So just to be more concise, the strait, in the strait. So notice that preposition, in the strait. So if both sides have accused the other, it would be you saying, Jennifer, you did it. But then me saying, yeah, but you did it too. So we're both saying that the other party is guilty, basically. More than 1,000 British personnel. This is not the word person, which is singular, or people, which is plural. If you were just talking about people, because we have 1,000, it'd be more than 1,000 British people. But that's not where personnel comes from. Personnel means a person employed. Employed by a specific company or a specific area. We don't know. But based on the context, we, of course, would assume that it's employed by the government or employed by the military, because that's the context here. So also notice that there's no S. It's not personnel's, even though it's 1,000. Employee is a regular noun. So you would say 1,000 employees with an S, because there's more than one. But personnel is a collective noun, so never add an S to it. But it can exist in a plural form. Personnel are already deployed in the region. If they're deployed, it means that they're active in that region and they're active for a military purpose. So this is a military terminology. Deployed in the region as part of existing defensive operations, including counter-drone teams and fast jet squadrons. the ministry said. So the Ministry of Defense, and we are talking specifically about the UK Ministry of Defense. And that's the end of the article. So now I'll read the article from start to finish, and you can focus on my pronunciation. UK promises jets, drones, and warship for Strait of Hormuz defense mission. The UK has said it will contribute drones, fighter jets, and a warship to a joint mission aimed at safeguarding shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. Defense Minister John Healey announced the package at a virtual summit of defense ministers on Tuesday. It includes autonomous systems to detect and clear naval mines, drone boats, and Typhoon jets for air patrols. More than 40 other nations are involved in the mission, which Healey said would begin when conditions allow. For months, Iran has been controlling the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's busiest oil shipping channels, in retaliation for U.S. and Israeli attacks. The U.S., for its part, has been enforcing a blockade of Iranian ports to exert pressure on Tehran to agree to its terms, a move that has infuriated Iran. Some 20% of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas uses the crucial waterway, whose blockage has sent prices soaring globally. A ceasefire has been in place between the U.S. and Iran since April, but U.S. President Donald Trump has said it is on massive life support. Both sides have accused the other of launching attacks in the strait. More than 1,000 British personnel are already deployed in the region as part of existing defense operations, including counter-drone teams and fast jet squadrons, the ministry said. Do you want to keep learning English with the news? If you do, put yes, 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 put yes, yes, yes in the comments below. And of course, make sure you like this lesson, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you're notified every time I post a new lesson. And you can get this free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can go to my website or look for the link in the description. And you can keep learning English with this lesson right now.